Hi, and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about classical education, classical books, the ancient world, and kind of almost modern world, but whatever we want to talk about. My name is Graham Donaldson, and I am joined with my two colleagues in classicism, AJ Hannenberg.
That's this person.
And Thomas Magby.
Hello.
And today, Thomas, I'm coming with you. I got a problem.
Okay.
And it's a dilemma.
Okay.
An ethical dilemma.
Okay.
And I don't have a matrix through which to approach this dilemma.
Did you see that they're remaking? There's a new
I did
Matrix
see
coming
that.
out.
There's a new Matrix coming out?
Yeah,
new-
Matrix 4.
Is it Resurrection?
It's like Neo goes back to work.
Well,
like he's laying off. He's like Neo's in a psychiatrist's
doesn't
office.
It looks like the first movie, doesn't it?
It looks like the first movie remade, except Neo is like 60.
Woof.
I know, and he's like, I don't like my life.
Follow the white rabbit.
Exactly.
Oh man, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. It looks exactly the same. And he like meets Trinity in like a Starbucks, and he's like, I feel like I know you, and she's like, me too. It looks.
Matrix, Resurrections.
Oh, weird. Were they
I
like?
know.
Oh, 'cause didn't they get plugged back into the Matrix, and that was the deal that he made with them?
I don't know. I didn't watch the last one because the
At
last
the end
one.
of the last one?
The last one. I didn't watch it because the second one was so stupid, and I didn't watch them.
I never saw the third one.
I really like the first one.
First one was great.
Graham being grumpy about movies.
And
Where
then
have I heard that before?
You mean every other episode?
Every
of
other
ours? Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Anyway, so I have my ethical dilemmas, and if I only had some kind of framework to work with these ethical dilemmas, I would be a better person.
Sounds like
I'm
it'd be
coming
great.
to you, Magby.
What do I know?
With my help.
You can't just take like an online quiz.
Yeah, seriously. That doesn't BuzzFeed
Like a BuzzFeed
exist for
quiz?
this? Yeah. What decision
Should I make
I
this
did that.
ethical
I was Hufflepuff.
What's wrong with that? You're not a Hufflepuff.
You input your ethical decision, and the answer was Hufflepuff.
Yeah,
This wasn't very helpful.
it wasn't.
Okay, so hey, speaking of ethical dilemmas, gentlemen, I have horrible news. Are you ready for this horrible news?
Yes.
You awake to a strange sight, and I'll explain that strange sight.
Am I a centipede? Are we doing Kafka?
Yeah, we're doing Kafka. You've turned into a centipede. Wasn't it a cockroach? Is it?
When did
I don't
that
know. It was a
happen?
giant
It just says
bug.
a vermin. That's all it
Is it
says.
really all it says? Okay. I'm sure that I copied this word for word from Wikipedia, so in case anyone's looking for the reference, here's what you see as you wake up. There's a runaway trolley barreling down the railway tracks. Ahead on the tracks, there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. You are standing some distance off in the train yard next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks. However, you notice that there is one person on the side track. You have 2 options. Do nothing and allow the trolley to kill the 5 people on the main track. Pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill 1 person. Which is the more ethical option? Gentlemen, go.
Pull the lever for sure.
Why?
It's like the Kobayashi Maru.
You're saving 4 people.
But 5 people, it's even better than that. But
Well, I mean, the equal,
No,
you're
no.
losing 1, you're saving 5. So that's a net
Hey
gain of
man,
4.
you're walking in where are we? The woods, San Francisco. Where are there trolleys?
sure, in San Francisco.
Okay, so you're
yeah.
walking in San
The
Francisco.
woods? The woods in San Francisco?
There's like mine
There are
carts.
woods.
Mine carts.
You want to live in the woods
Why are
outside
5
of San
people
Francisco?
hanging on the
Now, that's the real
minecart?
question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're walking in San Francisco, and this trolley is coming down the street, and there's people like, are they tied to the tracks, kind of like Rocky Bullwinkle style?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like a cartoon.
So, So the tied to the track. You didn't cause this. This isn't your. You didn't do anything. Someone else is to blame. But once you pull that lever, you've made a conscious decision.
exactly
You've
right.
entered into the game.
This guy gets it.
And you are now culpable. But before that, you're not culpable. You're just an agent.
I'm fine with that. I'll pull it.
Well-
I mean, if you're Raskolnikov, you've already killed 3 people. So, like Raskolnikov, I feel like would make that decision really quickly.
No, I do not pull a lever. I mean,
pull
I'm
the lever
sorry.
for sure.
5 people are going to die, but
Not your fault.
I am not going.
But it is your
Who
fault.
am I? Who am I to play
It
God
is your
in
fault
the
because you are
lives?
choosing not to pull a lever you could have pulled.
This is
so
terrible.
now it's your fault.
But
No.
Oh, it's absolutely your fault.
Doesn't
You
work
could
that
have
way.
taken action and you didn't.
okay, so
If you see a drowning child and you say, "Oh, that sucks," and you don't do anything, the dad has a right to be angry
No,
about
this is-
his dead child.
No, this is I get to choose who drowns. That's different. This is not I save someone or don't save someone. This is I make a decision who lives and make a decision who dies.
You would if someone was drowning. If you had a chance to save someone drowning,
I
and
would
you
try to
didn't
save that.
them.
I would try to save that person drowning. But this
How is that different from this?
Because in this one, it's like you've got
You were actively
people
killing someone, is what
drowning
you're
in a
saying.
tub, and you can pull a lever to divert the water to somebody else to drown another kid, and then you're doing that instead. It's very different.
I still feel like net gain of 4 is a pretty compelling argument.
Okay, well,
That's just math.
Why it's simple arithmetic.
Yeah.
interesting.
I know you're mocking me. I still feel like I would pull the lever.
Let's okay. Well,
And I just yell, sorry, bro. You know.
What would my automated Tesla do if it's driving? Would it,
it's obviously utilitarian, so would pick the.
so would it like run everyone's like social credit score and
Thank
be
you,
like,
good.
there's 4 criminals versus like 1 teacher
I'm
or
surprised.
something?
So AJ chooses to pull the lever to. I mean, you didn't even ask who's on the track. Like that could be your mom on the track. Like why would you?
If it's 5 serial killers in the car,
It's 5 Hitlers and it's 1, and your mom is the one
well,
on the other
5
track.
Hitlers, first of all, not possible. But if it's 5 serial killers all
sorry.
in one car, like that's just a historical
The
anomaly.
one point of my trolley example where you're going to call credibility is there. Okay, yeah, great. Okay.
Hey, in San Francisco, trolleys go wild all the time.
I don't think that they can be. Anyway, whatever. Yeah.
And the levers to divert them
And
are
you're not
incredibly
asking
public.
Who tied these people up? These are the real questions we should be asking.
Why is everyone standing on the tracks?
They're tied up. This
the
is
people tie
straight
them
cartoon
up is
style.
the girl. It's like stupid moose and squirrel, like that lady. What's her name?
Rocky and Bullwinkle
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the show. I don't know what her name is.
I'll get to
Boris
the bottom of
and
this.
Natasha.
Natasha, that's right.
Good. This is
Hey.
important. I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
Squirrel. Moose and squirrel.
So, AJ, you are taking the side that it is the number of lives that you save. I find your lack of asking who's on the track disturbing.
Yeah, I don't really care.
I think it's worth considering. But anyway, you're saying that it's purely the numbers, so it is better for one person to die instead of 5. So it kind of boils the decision down.
I run my entire life by cold clinical mathematics.
Yeah, naturally. That's yes. And Graham, you're saying you don't want to be complicit in murder.
Yes, I mean, it comes down to agency.
This is interesting. So, as you might imagine,
There's no third way, like Kirk and Kobayashi Maru.
there are
There's
like
not,
8 ways. To resolve the situation?
Yeah, with everyone surviving.
No.
Oh.
Well, the whole point of the Kobayashi Maru is that he like changed the program,
I know.
right? So I guess you
Can't I throw myself in front of the trolley and stop it?
No, you'd kill one extra person. That doesn't.
And then it would go and still kill
probably.
people?
Yeah, sure. If
Wouldn't-
it can make it through 5 people killing them, I feel like it could make it through 6, right?
But wouldn't my luscious body gum up the works?
What? Everyone on YouTube is like
I feel like every episode he looks for an opportunity to talk about his luscious body.
Yeah, it's really becoming a
be
problem. Exactly.
every
Yeah.
What did I do it last time?
Graham is starting his modeling career, and he wants to start it off from here.
Oh,
So-
when I was an Instagram influencer?
yes, yeah, you did talk about
it's
that.
my
last
means
time.
of production.
That is actually true.
Your
if you
luscious
have-
body is your means of production.
If you have the means, you got to produce, boys.
So you two are taking two different views toward how to make this decision, but ultimately you're ending at a point of disagreement about which one is the right one.
Correct.
Well,
Mine's the right one.
but how would I resolve a conflict between the two of you? You know, let's say
Fisticuffs.
it's like a really slow trolley, so we have lots of time to discuss you know what the right decision is. How would you try and persuade the other person? Let's say it's the two of you wake up and have to make this decision together. How would you move from there to then saying what we should do with his leave?
I need to persuade AJ that his numbers game isn't as good as my agency
or
game.
you could agree with him.
I would propose a slap fight, and we would slap
It's a
fight
physical
each other.
force. This
Yeah.
is good. I like where this is going. Any other thoughts on
Pound
that?
for pound, I think mathematically I could take him.
You probably could. You have-
You're not even going to disagree with that?
he's look at his reach. He's like an albatross. That guy.
How do you like that? not the direction I expected, but here we are.
AJ and I once had a duel on campus.
Was it a slap fight?
No, it was. We were playing a game of all the kids. We were playing a game of Assassin, and AJ and I were the last 2 alive in the whole campus. We killed all the kids. And
That's the kind of teachers we are.
And we decided we were going to have a public duel with swords, and AJ obliterated me
yeah.
because of his reach.
And the funny thing is, in both of our heads, it was glorious. There's a storm coming in the background. It was the last day of school. We
Yeah.
had seconds to watch and see who got hit. It was this huge thing. And then we watched the video
We threw
later.
gauntlets, and it was just us like wailing,
It's just-
flailing around foam
it's
swords,
two
and
clearly awkward English teachers hitting each other with foam swords,
was-
and it does not look cool at all.
because
not
that's
our
what-
finest hour.
That's because that's
Yeah.
what it was. So.
But how would it? I mean, I don't know how you would convince somebody. Like it. I mean,
So physical force is an answer to
physical force is an answer. I think that if you are pulling or not pulling the lever, you are existing in the world saying, I am somebody that needs to always solve issues.
What do you mean?
And
No matter what decision you make?
yeah, it's like if you honestly came across that situation, like there are so many doubts as to as to what's even just happening, that to be able to say, oh, this is I'm living in the trolley problem,
Right.
Versus maybe this is a movie, or maybe there's like this is a set that's going on, or maybe there's like this is a controlled thing and I just don't realize it because I've just happened to stumble upon it. I don't know. There's just like so many factors that that I feel like not acting is the prudent choice in this one. And then if 5 people get killed, it's a tragedy. But if one person gets killed because of my action, it is a tragedy that I'm to blame for.
Yeah, to take from your example earlier, you were talking about moving water from one place to another and it killing someone's kid.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine you then have to like explain to the parents, I chose to kill your kid.
I
right?
saved 5 lives by
Yeah.
drowning your child.
Yeah, exactly.
Not cool.
So,
Anyway, that's how I think about it. To me, this has always been very easy, is that you don't pull the lever. You don't pull the lever.
I assume in the same way, AJ, it's easy for you to say, obviously you pull the lever.
I mean, weirdly enough, kind of, yeah. I mean, there's 2 possible tragedies, either a tragedy of 5 deaths or a tragedy of 1 death. My agency in this world is to prevent the 5 death.
Why?
And
How is that your agency?
aim for
Why is that your calling?
because I'm next to the lever.
You have the ability to do it.
I have the ability to do it. And so if I can make for a smaller tragedy in this world, the question would immediately become, okay, Mr. Donaldson, would you do it if the numbers were changed? What if it was...
It's going to kill 1 person, or I can squish 5 people?
No.
mean,
It's
I'm still not
going to
going.
kill 100 people or 1. Can you divert it? What if it's 1,000 people versus 1? Would you divert it if it killed 1 over 1,000?
I still feel like it's not my place to be...
It is your place. You're by the lever.
No.
Literal physical location.
No, it is not. Still don't feel like I am... that it is right for me to be deciding who lives and who dies.
Perhaps it isn't right, but the choice is yours, whether or not you
And I'm not
want it
gonna make
or not.
And I'm not going to make
So
it.
you have abdicated your potential to save that many lives. This feels like to me an old episode of Star Trek where it's the Kobayashi Maru exercise. They
what
want to
we're
know
talking about.
Yeah, we've
if
talked
you,
about it.
as the captain of the
Exactly.
Enterprise, are going to send 1 man to his death to save the crew. That is your choice.
No, it's like there's a ship in the Klingon zone, and you got to go and you're gonna get blown. You're gonna blow your ship up to try to save the crew of the Kobayashi Maru, or you just say like, "Sorry guys, you're in the Klingon zone. Tough it out."
I
That's the
forget
test.
the exercise, but there's an exercise where they need to know you need to be willing to sacrifice
So you-
1 for the sake of many.
Are you gonna risk your ship and and the simulation is you always die?
Yes.
Or are you going to let that other crew die and not risk your ship? And it's slightly different because you've got your. It's like it's a circle question.
Well, you
What
are
do
the captain,
What do you
right?
take more control of, your crew or like strangers, or the general population? But
In that case, there's a question of responsibility.
Yes.
You are a captain, and it's your responsibility to protect everyone in the Federation that you can. It's your job. Like you are chosen and paid to do it.
Sure, but in the analogy here, you're next to the lever and you could make a change.
That's the thing, is it is still your choice. Whether you want it or not, it's yours. But you can make the choice.
But the responsibility of doing it is the question. Like if in the end you're in the final judgment and God's saying, under what authority did you feel like you were allowed to make the decision of who lives and who dies? I don't feel like I have a leg to stand on.
My answer would be whether or not it was my authority, the choice was given to me. And so I made the best choice I could. Like whether or not you
So did
want
I
the
then.
choice,
So did I.
it's yours.
Yeah,
right?
so then I made the best choice I could too.
You have the responsibility, right? Whether or not you chose that, whether or not you should have that is beside the question. The responsibility is yours.
Yeah, but we both made the choice. You chose to pull the lever and I chose not to.
So you still haven't answered my numbers question. If the numbers were way different, would it change?
I don't feel like I could kill a man to save 1,000. I don't feel like I can.
What if it was everybody versus 1?
I
Like
also
everybody.
don't feel like I
all
can.
humans. You live with 1 guy. They all die, and it's you and like Craig.
Well, when we're talking about like even the survival of the human race, and it's someone's given me authority to. Well, even the situation is so absurd that I feel like
An atomic
it doesn't.
bomb
It's not
is
going to
launching toward New York City. You can choose to redirect it, but it's going to go to middle of nowhere, Canada, where 1 person lives. So you can redirect it either 10 million or 15, whatever the number is. 10 million people die or one person dies. That's the example.
And maybe because it hits New York retaliates, and then
there's more death as a result.
There's more death
Perhaps
as a
then
result.
there is something to be said about the scale. So when you have millions of people and radiation and a city with all of its art and culture and history and all of that kind of stuff, then that changes the calculus. But when it's like a trolley of 5 or a trolley of 1 and it doesn't affect anything else in the world other than just these 5 people and this one person, that feels like it's a different kind of scenario.
But hasn't that sort of then it is a calculus, right? If it doesn't change the calculus, it just makes it more severe. It's still a calculus. It's still a calculation, right? Doesn't that sort of undermine the position you take?
Huh?
You by saying that it's so many people changes the choice I would make means that you are still depending on math to make your choice. So why does fewer people? At what point does it switch? From I won't pull the lever to I will pull the lever?
It does switch. The scale of it changes it.
So
we're talking whole cities, but if we're talking like you're walking down the road and there's 5 people versus 1 person, that is that's different.
Let's get the last comment. One more from AJ, one more from Graham.
Sorry, I know you plunged us into this.
This is the point. So go for it. So last comment each person, then we're going to move on.
I guess I try to adhere to. I was with a kid I tutor. I was studying Kant this weekend. I know that sounds pretentious, but he had an assignment. So I was looking at Kant, and his way to evaluate morals is: could I make this a universal rule?
Yep.
Right?
Categorical imperative.
Is it a categorical imperative? And here, I think the categorical imperative is to save as many as you can. And I say this knowing that when you begin to weigh human life in a calculus, that never goes well, right? So it's the lesson of crime and punishment. When you begin to weigh the value of human life against like decision making, I don't know. When you start to do the math of people, that's never a good math. But I think maybe the difference is Raskolnikov is bringing into their evil or goodness as a piece of the question. Mm-hmm. I think if I can save a lot of people, it's either 1 or it's 5. I try to save the 5.
Graham, last comment.
The context matters. So, I mean, if you have the bomb coming in, then then presumably it's being launched by a belligerent power, and then the number calculus seems to be a little bit more appropriate. When it's something is sort of absurd or something is more like commonplace, it's not a belligerent. It's not a belligerent power who's trying to destroy a whole people. It is sort of the common tragedies of everyday life, a car accident, people about to get hit versus one person getting hit. Do you close the train and close the gate on the train and crush the worker, or let the train fly off the cliff? Like when it's those sorts of situations, I feel like putting you standing up and saying I'm going to decide sort of who lives and who dies is arrogant and morally culpable. That was your final comment.
Yeah, that's actually right.
Yeah,
right.
I was just going to make a joke, but that's fine.
Okay.
Is it a funny one?
Am
I going to laugh at this joke?
You never left.
You never left my joke.
Well, then let's keep going. So the point of that exercise is of us spending 10 minutes talking through those things. Graham, have you changed your mind after that 10-minute back and forth? Would you do something different based on, so back to original trolley problem?
Yes, it was. No, the original trolley problem, no. But talking about it in terms of scale, so like whole cities of people, does seem to change the principle.
Yeah. AJ, have you changed your mind, again, specific to the trolley problem we started with? Would you make a different decision?
Yeah, Graham always changes my mind. I don't know if I fully changed it, but maybe I've never thought about it completely enough, and his position is a strong one, sure. Right? Where am I the guy that gets to choose who dies? That's a great question.
Sure. So
it's like what Gandalf said to Frodo about Gollum.
What did Gandalf say to Frodo?
He said Frodo was like, man, I wish Bilbo freaking killed Gollum. And Gandalf's like, yeah? Would you make that choice? Can you choose who gets to live or die, Frodo? Maybe Gollum has a part to play in this saga. And he did, Magby. He had a part to play.
Since he got his extra comment, is the joke, are we past the joke now?
Yeah, we're past it.
I'm sorry. I was going to give you the chance to say the joke.
Go for it.
So, but the point getting to the end of it is even after 10 minutes of discussing, I know it's short, I know a conversation could go longer than that. both of you were still arguing for your positions. So for just as third-party observer, it seems like you all have a deeper way of thinking about this problem than you went into it with, but ultimately your position stayed the same, right? Is that a fair way of putting it?
Because I'm American. I don't have to change my opinion. I'm dug in, and I'll never change.
I'm not making that point, but I'm fine for you to take that mantle if you want to. That's not how I feel. But the point is that in talking about ethics, a point to take away from this is that you'll see different. We've talked about this before with Alistair McIntyre's After Virtue, is that most ethical discussions end up being two competing schools of thought fighting each other, and there's no coherent way for those ethical traditions to talk to each other because they're incorporating different values. So AJ is arguing from a consequentialist view that takes the outcome of the matter into effect, and perhaps the primary thing to take into effect. And again, it becomes a very simple problem. Do fewer people die if you pull the lever, or do more people die? And that makes the decision for you. Graham is taking a non-consequentialist view, where it's not so much about this specific, in maybe even an agent-centered view, which we'll talk about what all these things mean. You're focused on the person themselves, that the virtue of the person making the decision matters. And so there's a different calculus that goes into effect. The number of people at some point might necessitate murder, but it's still murder that you're asking that person to commit.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yes.
And the problem then is that you're looking at different things and you can't talk to each other because AJ...
One's wrong and one's right.
That's what I meant to say. Graham's obviously wrong.
Like I said, I'm dug in and I'll never change.
But so almost by definition, they can't talk to each other because what AJ will point to is, yeah, but the numbers. And what Graham will point to is, yeah, but the person making the decision. And those two views can't talk to each other. Is that a fair way of putting it? And yes, maybe you gain a deeper appreciation for what the other person thinks, but ultimately you think they're wrong. So this is, again, the point of this is to talk about what some of these different frameworks are so you can recognize them. And I think part of that is to say then what is the other person focused on? So again, it's only a 10-minute discussion and, I don't know how dug in you are on a made-up trolley example, but Graham, if you wanted to persuade AJ, you might look for then some consequentialist way of talking about this. What are effects that aren't being taken into effect by AJ by focusing just on the lives on the whether you pull the lever or not? AJ, how can you make a moral argument about the goodness of the person pulling that lever? And in that way, you can talk more directly to each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think what we should do is just kill the guy who made the trolley.
Yes, he's obviously
the one to blame.
Yeah, obviously the problem with this. I'm okay with that. So let me run through these of what some different ways of thinking about. I guess maybe to zoom out even from that is we're talking about ethical decision making. Do you all have any, when someone talks about an ethical issue or an ethical question, what makes it ethical?
Has to do with right and wrong, right?
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to put it. Anything else?
No, that's fine. That's what I was going to say.
I would also add that I think there's a difference between if the dilemma is should I lie or should I tell the truth, just in general. I don't think that's an ethical dilemma because there's a clear right thing to do. I think what's special about the trolley problem is you have two bad outcomes, and a bad thing is going to happen one way or the other. How do you think about which one is less bad than the other? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So there's something to a clear right and wrong. I wouldn't call a dilemma in the same way that the trolley problem is. People might disagree with that, but that's just my intuition on it. And there are some books on like business ethics that'll call it that too. The decision of like whether to cheat on taxes or not is not really a dilemma. One is clearly right, one is clearly wrong. All right, so I referenced AJ's views as consequentialist. Does anyone what does consequentialist mean?
Focuses on the consequences of your action.
Care about the outcomes. Consequentialism can be broken down into a few specific schools of thought, and these are ones that you all have probably heard of before. And so please start throwing out some kind of paragons of each of these schools as we go through them, if you have any that come to mind. The first one, probably the most common, is utilitarianism. Mm-hmm. So what is utilitarianism? What do y'all know about that?
Just the maximizing the happiness.
Take whatever action guarantees the most happiness for the most people.
Yeah, you'll get some people who disagree on the most people part because, like in theory, it would be just the most happiness. So like for the trolley example, if the one person is like a super happy person and the 5 are bumps on a log, you'd kill the 5 bumps on a log because they wouldn't, or if the 5 are suicidal, you would take that into account, right? Or, just don't want to be alive or whatever.
I'm sad.
Yeah, it is sad. So is the whole you might have to kill some people. And I should have said this. The trolley problem comes from Philippa Foot, a philosopher who was a part of kind of reintroducing like virtue ethics, which I guess we'll get to in a second. So utilitarianism, you are in the ideal form from Bentham, you're actually trying to measure utils. You're trying to measure units of happiness and then make...
Is that what he calls a unit of happiness? Is one util?
A util. And so you'll get different... So it's like
crypto.
Yes. Which one gives you the most Bitcoin at the end? Is that...
No, we should start utils.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do whatever we want to. But what AJ's saying, it's not even just the number of people. It's, again, the happiness outcome from that. So yes, you'd assume 5 people being happy is more than one person being happy that they're not dead, but not necessarily, right? It matters how they feel about living.
Okay.
So there's more to it than that.
I want to maximize my happiness. I don't want to kill anybody.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's actually a good point.
So if by not killing anybody, my utils don't have a deficit.
And again, that's where you're taking into account the agent. You're taking into account the person making the decision more so than the outcome of that decision. And that's what we'll say.
I didn't realize I was so selfish.
Well, speaking of selfish, let's move to the second one.
Okay.
The second one is the egoist school. The egoist school would be, what is the best decision for me personally? Now, this is where I'm shocked you all didn't ask who's on the tracks. But again, that'd be where, Graham, your wife is the one person, and then the 5 are 5 strangers. You'd
still not pulling the lever. Bye, strangers.
So you're welcome for that one. But I guess
maybe your wife is in the car of the 5.
There
would
it
be
is.
the question.
And then
I'm the one on the track. Make the decision now, Graham.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
So again, for to make it more problematic for AJ, it'd be what just happened? Did you just pull? Oh, you pull.
He's pulling the lever,
really
killing
fast.
me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fair. Totally fair, Graham.
Wow, this is.
I support your decision.
There's a fitting under the egoist school is the objectivist school, which we were joking about a little before the program. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say anything about objectivism?
Oh, they want to know how much money they get if they pull that lever. The objectivist school is, I don't really know how the objectivists would think about the trolley problem.
Oh, the same as the egoist,
yeah.
There's, I think so. Ayn Rand is the kind of creator of the objectivist school.
It's how rich are the people on the track?
Oh, how much money will they give you?
Are the people on the tracks like industry leaders?
I guess that might be how she thinks. Yeah, maybe.
Like how valuable are they to society, as a whole?
The direction I was taking it is that,
or are they bureaucrats?
Yeah, and then in that case, let them go.
No.
The Ayn Rand wrote a book called the Virtue of Selfishness, and you'll see this in objectivism that selfishness is not a bad thing to be protected from. It is a good thing to be embraced and understood. There's like a ethical form of selfishness. Mm-hmm. You're doing what's good for you. It's not far off from Adam Smith. What's good for you ends up being good for others. Therefore, you should follow things that are good for you. Don't try and be a martyr, is one version of it. Okay.
Yes.
You're thinking about it?
No, it's just the thing I'm thinking about is this is sort of like an ethic that is portrayed by a character that we're currently reading in 12th grade English in Crime and Punishment. There's a character named Peter Petrovich Luzin who actually posits this with the idea being like, if I make up a bunch of money, if I see a starving poor man and I take my coat and I cut my coat in half, now 2 people have half a coat. But if I go and I make like a bunch of money and live my life and sort of take care of myself, that's one less person in the world that needs to get taken care of. And maybe my like lucre can trickle down.
Well, by my industry, I'll start a business. And then if everybody does this, we'll have lots of businesses. And then he'll be able to get a coat if he wants one.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of his Lucen's. But he also uses that to justify like kind of being a dink.
Right.
Yeah, he's kind of a hard doofus.
Yeah.
So he states a reason, but it's not the real reason.
It's a thin veil for him trying to like marry this girl.
Which I think might be a fair criticism of egoism and maybe objectivism, that it's kind of dressed up as a philosophical theory, but really it's do whatever's best for you.
Yeah, just sort of, yeah.
I don't know if you need much of a philosophy.
Naked selfishness.
Yes, exactly. Then finally, in the consequentialist school would be a view toward the common good. So the common good probably would be closer to what AJ is arguing for, that you can just weigh the number of lives. It's better that there be 5 people who walk out of this experiment than that there's one person, not experiment, but experience.
I don't know, with global warming, I mean, like that's 5 less consumers.
So yeah, it would actually be better for there to be less CO2 emitted into the, I don't like this at all. This is getting dark very fast. I don't know what I expected, but okay. So those are more your consequentialist schools. So again, the point And there are three big categories and then some more specifics we're going into. But consequentialist is that first group. And the focus then is on the outcome of whatever policy idea that you're having. And that would be closer to what AJ was arguing from before. We'll go into what broadly is called non-consequentialist, but there's actually a third one that's agent-centered, which is also non-consequentialist, so just stick with it. AJ, you said you had read Kant recently. You, I think, made reference to the categorical imperative. Can you say that again? What is the categorical imperative?
Well, let me clarify. I read about Kant. I didn't read any actual Kant. We were working on a paper. But the categorical imperative, if I understand it correctly, is that I should act as far as right and wrong is concerned in such a way that the things that I choose, I would be comfortable if I were to make them a universal rule.
Yeah.
So should I lie to my wife? Well, would I be comfortable saying that that is what every man should do in every circumstance? No.
Right.
Should I tell the truth to my wife? Would I be comfortable saying that every man should do that in all circumstances? Yeah, I think so. I think
All
men
circumstances?
well, not necessarily all, but should all men tell the truth to their wife in the same circumstance that I'm currently in?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, probably, right? Would I be comfortable if every man would make the choice to pull the lever? Probably.
Do you think so?
Yeah. Would I be comfortable if every man made your decision? Maybe. And that's where it gets complicated, I think. It's where the universal rule doesn't necessarily make it clear.
Yes.
And it just boils down to like what you're cool with.
Oh, yeah. Should other people be like me? And the answer is, yeah, of course they should.
Well, I mean, that's also kind of his point, is that morals aren't connected to reason as much.
Yes.
Like they are kind of, but they're like foundational for reason.
Yeah, that's because Kant's project is to try and separate ethics from religion. And so the categorical imperative is one version of his answer to that. I think the second one is Kantian, also like a rights-based view. But yeah, and there are people who will make fun of the categorical imperative because you can say funny things like, I'm wearing a dress shirt on a Saturday. Should everyone wear a dress shirt on a Saturday? Like you get into like silly imperatives for everyone to live out, but
you'd probably just say it's not a moral issue
at that point. That's probably fair, but
right.
I'm trying to think of other,
because the categorical imperative is for moral things.
Yeah. And I guess that's the same. That's how we set it up at the beginning of, we're talking about a specific kind of problem here.
Yeah.
I think but again, in the same way, should everyone commit tax fraud if that's like a situation that you're in? And obviously that would create huge problems. Therefore it's a thing you shouldn't do. I take Graham's point though, that categorical imperative feels like it's kind of stealing in some other framework to make that decision and then saying everyone should agree with me.
But then by framing that your shirt example is a moral issue, we are now also appealing to a category of things in order for our categorical imperative to work, which is that there is a understood moral issue versus a amoral issue, which is what we wear. And so if we already know what that distinction is, then the categorical imperative needs something a priori for it to work. Sure. And then we're already now we're talking about morality, and why do we need the categorical imperative if we all know what morals are?
Well, it wasn't that Kant's point, was that reason, like there has to be something that, like what is it? Space and time it's really complicated, but space and time are things through which we interpret sense experience, and sense experience is individual to everybody. And so there has to be something we're sort of bringing to the party. One of the things that we bring to the party is moral. Gotcha. That's my basic understanding of it, is that it's not, like it should kind of be based on reason, but it's not subject to sense experience. Kind of. I'm probably just butchering this. So
you're nailing it. No, I'm all for it. But again, this is an attempt at an answer for like how one should live, I guess is the way to say it. So it's kind of sidestepping the moral part of it and saying what's like the right way to live, maybe is one way to put it. So after that, for a non-consequentialist view would be a rights-based view. And again, I think this is Kant also. It's summarized as treat people as ends and not means. That's the way I normally hear it. The quote is, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of another, always at the same time as an end and never simply as a means to an end. So what would that look like? What would a rights-based approach be to making a decision?
You can never treat a person as a means to an end. So if the end is like, I don't know, economic success for everybody, I could never use a person as a means to get there. He is the end.
Yeah. So it would be in contrast to the consequentialist view, which you would say, hey, number one, the one person who's getting squished your life is now a means to everybody else's improved happiness because
Right.
you have 1 utils and these have 5 utils.
Right.
And so you're treating that person as a means to the ends for everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
I
I think that, yeah. Whereas if you let everybody get squished, if you let the 5 people get squished, at least then the decider hasn't done that, hasn't dehumanized the one
by choosing
him,
Right.
by choosing to kill him over the other people.
Because otherwise, it's an inevitable thing is happening, as opposed to I've chosen to kill someone.
Yeah, but I mean, AJ's point is where it's like your lack of choice is a choice. Like you were choosing. Well, I don't know. There's still the element of doubt, like the lever doesn't work, or
Right.
anyway.
That's from Batman, isn't it? Where they have the 2 ships and one can blow up the other one,
Yeah.
but it turns out the thing doesn't work.
Oh, really? I don't know. It's been a long time since I
No,
watched
don't they just chuck it overboard?
The prisoners do, but don't the wealthy people try and press the button? No, I guess neither
No,
of them do.
I
You're
think,
right.
I think
neither of them
they
do.
chuck it. Nobody presses it,
You're
right?
right. You're totally right. Let's just
And
watch
that's why
more.
Joker gets mad, as he thought somebody would.
Blow someone up and they don't. This is fair. Okay, so non-consequentialist, you're not looking at the outcome. We have a categorical imperative, so act in ways wherein you think everyone should act the way that you're acting under the same circumstances. A rights-based view, which would say, don't treat people as means, treat them only as ends. And then another option, another category under this would be a fairness view. Have you all heard of John Rawls before? So do you know his veil of ignorance or his
No,
theory
I don't.
of,
I can't
his
remember.
theory of fairness? So the Rawls position is that you should act in a way where essentially you should remove yourself from the situation and imagine that you are an objective observer of what's happening, and then ask yourself, what is the most just, what is the fairest thing that should happen? Pretend I'm not a player in this circumstance. What is right? What is fair? What is just? What is the good thing that should happen? So as opposed to this is
And how would he solve the trolley problem? Just like it's fate. Sorry guys. Sorry 5. You get squished and the one person doesn't.
What would I want to happen? Well, I'd want the guy to pull the lever and save the 5, right?
you have to so it's remove your guilt from the situation, maybe is one way. So like you having to live with 5 people having died because you didn't pull a lever would be the thing you take out. Or even taking out, I feel wrong about, I think it would lead to pulling the lever and having it go to the one person, because you would take out your opinions on the matter. You would take out, just like if you're looking at.
But isn't thinking that 5 lives are more worth than 1 life also an opinion?
Sure. Yes. In the same way that categorical imperatives, probably stealing something in, it feels like you still have to know what is just.
Yeah.
The point being, what would be a better one? If there's like a moral problem where you stand to benefit from something happening, that's what you should take out from it. So maybe in this one,
You're in a game show.
or someone offers you money. They're in the trolley problem.
Save my baby.
Yeah, and then they'll give you a certain amount of money. Like that's the thing to ignore from it, because that's kind of
Gotcha.
a confounding factor. I think that's the easiest way to think about that.
Gotcha.
But again, you're trying to figure out what is the fairest thing by removing your individual interest in the situation. And then the last one in this non-consequentialist view would be some version of divine command, or pick your ethical system or religious system. Those arguments for law are not based on outcomes. It's based on like God, whichever religion, whichever God has commanded, this is the thing to do. So
how do we apply that to the trolley problem?
I probably the commandment to not murder would come to mind. So I think the Christian would have to grapple with them being okay pulling that lever.
Killing somebody?
Yeah, because it'd be hard to say that like God has commanded us to weigh, I don't know, the number of lives. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well, this makes me think of Kierkegaard again, where God commanded Abraham to do something that seemed immoral.
right.
And Abraham then sort of like held these 2 absurd things at the same time, that God, whatever, you can go back and listen to the episode, but it just reminds me of that absurd position that Abraham found himself in.
Sure.
But in this one, it feels like if you have some sort of view of the immortality of the soul, and also a view of, don't kill, of like, no, don't wantonly kill people, then you would have the point. Maybe the Christian position would be that, those 5 people, when they're dead and they're in heaven, they would be like, hey, so God, what was the deal with
What
the
should
trolley?
happen?
What just
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
And God would be like, yeah, well, I mean, I don't know.
Are you saying it's like a let him die and let God sort it out kind of thing?
Maybe that is this.
Kill them all and let God sort them.
Not kill them. Let the people like. But then I think back to the atomic bomb one. Like, it's the Christian position to let New York City get nuked,
Right?
Because instead of saving New York City and like killing the dude in Wisconsin or the dude up in like Montana.
Hey, whoa there.
I don't know. It's anyway.
And I,
Overstep.
yeah. And so like Sartre has a famous essay, Existentialism is a Humanism, and which is like a introduction to existentialism. It's very good. But in that, he'll say that this divine command category is unhelpful for answering any of these ethical problems, because all you really get are sentences from a Bible that are hard to apply to real life. So you could also just look and say, actually, this is so specific as a situation.
Thou shalt not murder doesn't
Apply to
it.
this, right?
Yeah.
So just to say, there are situations where maybe that's clear or not, but somewhere maybe divine command isn't a helpful category to think through what the right thing to do is.
So maybe there is no blame. Maybe then the individuals pulling or not pulling the lever, it does not fall under a virtue mandate. Like, am I doing the right thing or wrong thing? It's just I made the choice and did the thing.
Yeah.
And a tragedy befell.
Could you avoid the whole issue by saying, I'm going to roll a dice, and if it's odds, I pull it, and if it's evens, I don't, and that way absolve yourself of all guilt? And it still is chance, but there's a chance you might save the 5.
Sure.
God, and then you can say like God tells you what to do.
Right.
You cast
Yeah,
lots.
You cast lots.
Someone bring me a helmet.
There's the real
and some
biblical.
markers.
That's the
really
real-
fast.
Hey guys, we
Problem
solved it.
solved. Yeah, I like
This is it. Cast lots.
Because I'm thinking you could take it the other way and say, again, just to speak from a Christian perspective, Christianity has a high view on the value of human life. Therefore, maybe saving more human lives is better than saving fewer human lives. Like, you can make either one of those arguments, and they both kind of fit in that same framework. Just to wrap up on the agent-centered, which is so consequentialist, non-consequentialist, and agent-centered are those 3 big categories. Under agent-centered, we're focused on the person themselves. Again, this is where I think Graham is more focused. First would be a virtue focus. So virtue ethics. How would you talk about virtue ethics and what that?
I don't know.
Oh,
What is like that you are trying to adhere to some sort of ideal type? Is that
sure? Yeah. So like the point more so is, am I the decision maker making a virtuous decision? Which is not, is the outcome virtuous? Is, am I virtuous? Am I brave in the face of combat? Am I honest in the face of some kind of complicated situation?
So outcome doesn't matter.
Correct. So
Seems to be the position you are taking, Graham, is the thing I am doing a virtuous thing?
yes.
But even then, it's hard to figure out. Are you more virtuous in letting
and abstaining
5 die and abstaining, or is it more virtuous to take whatever guilt hit is going to come?
Sure.
And
But those outcomes
give
are
it a one?
separate from it. Is my action one that is good or not? And
But the weird thing is, I don't know if you can answer that without some sort of consideration of the outcome.
No. The thing is, the actual answer for the virtue person then has to take your own life out of the equation. So the answer to the virtue based one is, I will attempt to stop the trolley even if it kills me and the other 5 people.
sure.
And then even if at the end 6 people have died, like my private virtue is better than like standing around and being like, oh no.
Sure. I think that's a fair answer to it. It's outside the options, though. You only have 2 options.
All right. Well, I cracked it.
You solved it. You fixed it. And then finally,
That's what a gentleman would do.
just
Try to throw
Die?
himself in front of the train?
Yeah. Try to like.
Well,
knock
we'll
the train
say
out.
it's past you.
what
There's
Spider-Man
no
would
way
do.
you're going to outrun it and get to the people at all.
There it is.
You have only the lever. It's a mile down the line, and you have a little video screen of what's happening.
I didn't say this before, but the trolley problem and any other, sometimes you hear about brains and vats as ethical questions.
Wait, what? We're going to beg your
Not
pardon?
actual brains and vats. The philosophical question goes like this. Whatever. The question goes, let's say, AJ and Graham, I give you the option of your every experience of living is going to be one of pure bliss. You're going, imagine AJ wants to go live in the redwoods north of San Francisco. You get to go do that.
So human.
You're going to have all the money you want. You can go anywhere in the world, but you're only going to be experiencing those things. They're not actually happening. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect your brain to a bunch of electrical wires, and you'll have the experience of doing all these things, but your body is not actually doing those things. Would you take that trade? That's the brain in a vat. I don't want to go into it. Just I'm posing it to you.
Doggone it.
Sorry, I guess I should have done that instead of the trolley problem. Let me just get the last agent-centered view. Is that since we talked last week about the Communist Manifesto, a Marxist view would be an agent-centered view. So you would be looking at, am I making a decision that is most in line and most in support of the proletariat, or most in taking down or addressing the bourgeoisie? Am I acting in such a way that is furthering class consciousness, that's furthering Marxist ends? Again, that's am I doing those things as opposed to an outcome? You can put other categories in here, like a feminist view. Am I acting in such a way that is to the benefit of women? And so again, those are more agent-centered views.
Is the trolley an oppressor?
So the trolley problem doesn't line up with this one very well. But again, this would be, am I following? Am I retweeting things that are supportive of oppressed people? That would be a more Marxist view. Whether it gets retweeted or not, you're still acting in a way that supports groups that are oppressed. That would be one way of putting that. Okay, so I've walked through all these different things, this consequentialist, non-consequentialist, and agent-centered view. After hearing all of those, are we any closer to being able to talk amongst those different groups? Are you, now that you have kind of a breakdown of all of them, does that help in understanding these different lines of thought talking to one another?
Maybe, but I mean, it's like I don't think the answer is be literate in all of these different views.
Yep.
And then it's like worldview analysis. Like, you need to know if you're talking to a consequentialist so that you can put it in his terms.
Right.
I don't know if that's the answer. I don't think that's the answer.
No, it's not the answer. As I am unhelpful in my episodes, I think most of the takeaway is that there's kind of an irreparable conflict here, and I don't know. There's not one single answer. I do think it's helpful to understand when you're talking
personal virtue.
What'd you say?
Isn't personal virtue the actual answer?
You were right the whole time. Yeah. No, it's to understand when you're talking to someone who is not speaking in the same language you are, and that's where people start talking past one another. This is after virtue. I've referenced it already in this episode, and we've talked about it before. I've talked about this anyway. It's been, I'm sure, 100 episodes since I've done this. The most striking feature, this is a quote from that book. The most striking feature of contemporary moral utterance is that so much of it is used to express disagreements. And the most striking feature of the debates in which these disagreements are expressed is their interminable character. I do not mean by this just that such debates go on and on and on, although they do, but also that they apparently can find no terminus. There seems to be no rational way of securing moral agreement in our culture. And then he has 3 examples to go through. We're not going to do that here. But one of them is war. I think one of them is abortion, and I'm sure there's a third one. And he'll present 3 very compelling arguments that all 3 disagree with each other.
Capital punishment, I think, maybe the last
Probably
one.
the third one. And so then the question then being, what do we do about that? So that's where I wanted to take this to. If you have thoughts on that, we have people with different philosophical backgrounds that, faced with an ethical problem the way you two were, immediately have a reaction as to what's right. And then it seems there's not a way to then deal with that disagreement to find what is, in theory, the right answer.
So is it real? Is it? Are you postulating that everybody's kind of divided into all of these different kinds of schools?
Yes, but not through deep study. I think we just fall into them. So
the answer isn't just all the consequentialists should start a commune and all the non-consequentialists should. Is that really the answer? Is sort of this tribalism of like-mindedness?
I don't like that answer.
Yeah.
But this.
But that also couldn't have been true of history.
Oh.
It's not that small villages of people in the Dark Ages, after the fall of Rome, when people are huddled together for survival, weren't huddling together because they were all collectivists or they were all consequentialists or whatever.
Right.
It's just that I don't even think that's a practical way of doing it. Of saying go find everybody that you agree with and go form your own society.
Yeah. It's so one way to take it is Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind. He's trying to look at this question of why do people disagree, and his argument is that these ethical frameworks exist to bring people together. They exist to bring groups together, so that there's.
These differences bring them together.
I'm saying that the fact that there's more than one of each of these people his example is closer to saying that the purpose of religion is to bring people closer together, which gives an evolutionary advantage to that group of people, which then passes on those beliefs to the next group. So that's one way of answering this, is that there are benefits outside of the morality itself.
It's just like a mimetic complex that can perpetuate itself.
Yes. And so the point isn't that utilitarians are right or wrong. It's that a group of people who are utilitarians band together, and then that perpetuates because the group perpetuates. Does that make sense?
I guess I've always found that to be like kind of like a bait and switch kind of argument, or it's a little like. We got you all fired up about moral issues, but really it's just so that like your genes can spread.
Yes. I mean, that's his argument.
Yeah.
AJ, I cut you off a little while ago. I know you're...
you can see those wheels turning.
Yeah, I know. But
that's true. I was going to say something. Come back to me.
Yeah.
I'll raise my hand again when
I'll say a little more about
things
Jonathan Haidt, just because I find him interesting and this book interesting. So,
before you do, so we can get listeners on the same page, is he the same person who has said that like there's a temperament amongst people who are more liberal and a temperament amongst people who are more conservative? Is that does he write that book, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, there's like a personality component, but this book he's more focused on the values that differentiate people who are politically conservative and politically liberal.
Okay.
There are different categories that will elicit a response in the two different political parties.
Animate people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, your guy postulates that there is no way for these two camps to talk to each other or to come to any resolution about their moral issues.
Yes.
I don't know that that's true. First of all, Graham and I almost did.
We're buddies. We're bros.
And
you all are bros, but you disagree on... So, sorry. The problem is that faced with the trolley problem or any ethical problem, I think a moral relativist could very easily say there are hundreds of right solutions and it doesn't matter which one you believe, just believe one. But I don't think you all would say that. Maybe you do.
We can't know the answer between... So we're bros before knows.
I hate everything, and I hate that you just said that.
But my point was that at the end of it, you asked if our minds had been changed, and both of us said there was some progress,
yes. Yeah.
right? And so there's not only that, but I think the start is to start speaking to that worldview and leave the problem alone for a while and say, okay, well, you're coming from this perspective, I'm coming from a different one. Let's talk about that. And I couldn't help but think of an example, and I'm about to, for our non-Christian listeners out there, I'm about to wax Christian for half a second.
Get those 4-star reviews fired
You get
up.
those.
As long as it's 4-star, I'm fine with that.
So I've been listening to another podcast about the fall of the church, and one of the recent episodes was about this author, Joshua Harris, that wrote the book "I Kissed Dating Goodbye."
The podcast is The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. It's really interesting. It's really well done. Whew. Yeah, they put a lot more effort into the production than we do.
Stop,
for sure.
Don't say that. No.
I mean, ours is great. So he wrote this book when he was really young, and it was obviously a moral standpoint. It was a moral standpoint about dating and about courtship and about how parents should be involved and how marriage should work. And what changed his framework was seeing that work out in the world and growing up from 17 or whatever he was when he wrote it to being an older fellow who now has walked away from the faith entirely.
Yep.
So my question would be, how did his moral framework change? Because his moral framework seemed to change. I mean, maybe his school didn't change and it was still a results-based thing, or it was a personal virtue change thing. But it's entirely possible that not only did his standpoint change, but his framework changed, right? He changed into a different kind of ethical framework. So I think one of the ways that we come to different resolutions about these, because people's views on these things change, is watching our framework work out in the world.
Yes.
For example, Lutzen, the guy from Crime and Punishment, who believes that you should never divide a coat in half because everybody will have coats if we all work for our own self-interest.
Right.
Put 20 years on that opinion and then show him a guy with no coat.
Or then when his fiance works for her own self-interest, it really bugs him.
Right.
Yeah, or like the guy that employs him works for his self-interest, and all of a sudden Lutzen is out of the job and can no longer doesn't even have a coat to put on his own back. Right. And maybe his employer espouses the same framework that he had. Well, this is how these frameworks change, is when you see them fail to work coherently in the real moral world.
Yeah. No, I like that answer. And I do think you all talking from the beginning is a helpful example. Again, just to say, one way of answering in the way that McIntyre will answer the question in After Virtue is to say you need to embed yourself in a community to learn its stories, to understand how they make decisions. but then
Sounds exhausting.
But you end at a point where the only way of making right decisions is to exist in a small community, which maybe is a good answer. But
I think it is a good answer. I mean, no, because I
more
think
disagreement. I like this between
no,
you two.
Because there is something that changes. I mean, this is Plato saying that the virtuous city can only be big enough so that people can hear someone talking, right?
Yes.
Like there is something about when communities scale up that the virtue can't scale up with it.
Yeah.
That you have to sort of, or that the utilitarian ends up having a flavor that it doesn't have when you're in a small town where the utilitarian answer is like, we got to kill John. And
Right.
John's like, whoa. Yeah. Whereas,
right space. Yeah.
Whereas, when you're in the command center
Yeah.
and you're making these numbers calculations, you're in a different situation. So I think there is something about the maybe Jonathan Haidt just talks about this too, that like the evolutionary that things can get passed on from a group of people much more easily when it's a group of 3,000, a culture of 3,000 people as opposed to a culture of 350 million people.
Right.
I don't know.
Because I do think he's thinking of smaller numbers. I think he's even thinking smaller than 3,500. I think
Yeah.
he's thinking of groups of 100.
Yeah, I just, how can, the only way that something can pass its culture down throughout the ages that is a billion people,
Right.
is when its culture is a localized thing. So you think of Catholicism, like, you can dog on the Catholic Church all you want, but it is congregations
Right.
that pass themselves on with groups of 100 people,
Sure.
but also with a billion. And it's sort of this living thing. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's something to small communities that we as modern people just now are sort of looking at it almost through the guise of, since that doesn't exist very much in the
Yes.
modern world, we're realizing, there was stuff going on there that we didn't.
Yes, my only point is that we can talk about the benefits of small localized living. I'm sure, think of, a small village where you work and live in the same area. Lots of like health benefits to that too. But then we also talk about the dangers of echo chambers, and that would be a literal
Yeah.
echo chamber.
I don't know. I still think the pastor was right in Footloose. You
In
shouldn't
that
let
they
that
should-
outside music coming in and ruining the community.
That wasn't quite the message of Footloose, but at least you got to hear the music.
I also think that was the message of Footloose.
Stop. No, stop. I don't like this. So just as a way of landing it, I don't have like a total satisfactory ending. I think acknowledging that there are different strains of making right and wrong decisions about what's right and wrong is important. And your banal observation for the day is that different people think different things are right and wrong.
But is the healthy community one that has that disagreement?
That's what my takeaway from all this. And again, we saw it in the first 10 minutes of you all talking. I think that being around people who don't agree with you, I think there is a benefit to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more pro, larger society than you are, than maybe Graham you are from what you're talking about of small villages. I think there's a benefit to seeing and understanding that other people think about things differently, and to have a caution about, maybe point the second, that to have a caution about your own views. So think about when you all were answering the trolley problem. I know I put you on the spot, but most of your reaction was kind of instantaneous. And it was just like, I think this is right. And then you can come up with a rational defense of why you think it's right and wrong. But this is Haidt's point, Jonathan Haidt's point, that a lot of what we think is right and wrong is an emotion, or we feel it immediately, and then we come up with a rationale afterwards. I think it's fair to be cautious of, why do we think something is right? Am I digging in my heels because I want to be right, or do I actually think this is a correct position?
Is this why you read Vox?
I've talked about this before, that I try and balance my media consumption, where I want a left-leaning news source and I want a right-leaning news source. So I listen to both National Review and Vox. And I've learned that people think I'm saying Fox when I say left-wing, which I would anyway. VOX is what I say.
But wait, how much time we got? This may be a good question. Okay, I'll save it for the after episode.
Okay. So just to say, I think there are benefits to all of that, and just as a maybe third and final point, I think there should be a healthy skepticism of views that benefit you. So I think a skepticism of the egoist view would probably be healthy, but in all that to say, I think that some of these are better than others. So I'm presenting them somewhat objectively as these are different options so that they can be observed and noticed. I don't do that to present them all as equal, right? And maybe we'll go into that in the in-between. I'm curious what Graham's question is. But anyway, that's it. As an intro to ethical decisions, different ways of thinking about an ethical problem.
Interesting.
And an introduction to the trolley problem.
Do you know that when they when they were designing autonomous cars, they actually had to consider the trolley problem?
Sure.
Because if your car is making a decision about running somebody over and going like, oh no, someone's in the road, I'm going to go off into the sidewalk,
Right.
and there's like 20 people on the sidewalk.
Or if the thing on the sidewalk is a pole, and if it veers, it means it kills the driver.
Right.
Like they have to make the decision about whether or not to kill the kid in the road or the person driving the car.
Horrifying.
And one of those is making a payment to the car company. So I would imagine that the choice it's making is to save the driver.
Yeah, but what if it scans that kid and realizes it's like Kid President on YouTube or whatever? Everyone loves that kid.
Well, I'm scared for the future when it's like a quick MRI and it can tell that the kid has some terminal disease.
Woof.
And then it's measuring the terminal diseases in its driver and it quickly calculates which one has more life to save. And
Skynet.
That's messed up, man.
It is messed up.
All right, if you don't want Skynet to take over our future, you can become patrons of
This
the podcast.
feels like a horrible bait and
That was
switch.
bad. That was bad.
If you like to support people who do the right thing, support us on Patreon.
We're the good people.
No, if you do want to, if you are sitting here yelling at your radio, no, we weren't on the radio. You're yelling at your iPod. Do people have
big.
iPods?
No.
Whatever.
At your phone, at your
At your
iPhone.
phone, at your iPhone.
At your Android
At
phone.
your obnoxious.
Use your dial-up modem to contact the internet.
If you've got a hip-mounted iPad OtterBox that you are listening to this on,
Hey, don't make fun of that. I'm all about that life. That's,
you can email us at theguys@classicalstuff.net.
Yep.
You can tweet at us at classicalstuff or CLSSCAL stuff on Twitter, and I'll like it. You
you're so resigned to
you can find us on
I'll like
Patreon where we have tiers of things, and you can tell us about this podcast to your friends, or you can like and subscribe on channels, or you can leave a comment on iTunes and stuff. I don't know. Just thanks for listening. We appreciate you, and we have a lot of fun doing this. And
I guess the overall message is do whatever you want on the
do
internet.
whatever you want on the internet. Oh, not whatever you want. I mean, there's within bounds of reason. But this is Graham, Thomas, and AJ signing off.
Bye.
Ciao.
Pull the lever.
Gosh.